Welcome back, one and all, to Pod Stance, the Punk Stance podcast. It is me once again. I have returned from Morocco. I don't know if you saw that post, but I went over to Marrakesh for a week, and it was quite the experience. I rode a camel, I ate some interesting foods that gave me a dodgy tummy, and I am back, having got heat stroke and been sick and pooed everywhere. And that's not what you want to hear in the first 30 seconds of a podcast, but there you go, that's the kind of person I am. Speaking of sticky situations, I was thinking about how I've done a lot of these episodes with people that I know, and I think you can run out of people that you know very quick. I didn't realise that was the case, but I also don't have a huge amount of friends, so it happens that way as well. You kind of find out the hard way. But what I've done to maximise the potential of this podcast is released it to the world, basically. So what I did is I put a post up on Reddit. You might see it if you go onto the r/poppunkers subreddit. It's a very good subreddit. If you haven't been already and you're a big fan of this stuff, I would heartily recommend it regardless. But I put up a post basically outlining the two shows that I do, Release Ramble and Albums That Saved My Life. And I wanted to gauge the community's interest in this kind of show and being involved in it, because I want to spread it around. I know I do it with most of my friends and my family and that kind of thing, and that will still happen because I know a lot of people that I know and a lot of friends of mine and work colleagues, friends, family, whatever, still want to do the show, and why not? It's more people and I know them, so it's easier. But I figured that the best way to maximise the potential for this podcast is to share stories with people who don't normally get the chance to. Pop punk and music can influence people from around the world. You know, I've talked to Wishful Thinking in New Jersey, Farhampton in Chicago, and a smattering of other people from around the world. And I think there's more to be done in that scene. But outside of the bands, there's people, everyday, regular people who have incredible lives, incredible stories, and incredible experience that I want to share, not just with myself, but with my listeners. And I think having the opportunity to talk to just regular people about the music they love and how it's impacted them could be amazing, could be so inspiring for people. And there's kind of this stigma of podcast being for famous people, I guess, or people that yell "Haktur" into a microphone. I mean, I just did that. Where's my $6 million? But I think the most important thing is sharing the stories of regular people, like me. Well, regular in the sense of like I'm a regular part of society. Calling me regular is like saying a pot of crayons in a blender is modern art, but there you go. So we're starting this one with a man who approached me on the Reddit page, funnily enough. I've had a few other things come through about the whole thing, so I will thank you to everyone who submitted an interest in the podcast. This is the first one that I'm doing of the people from the Reddit post. It's still getting interest now. I only put it up a few hours ago and it's going absolutely mental, so thank you so much for showing interest in that. I'm really glad that there's a sort of, I keep using the word interest, but it is, people have an interest in this kind of thing, and I appreciate each and every one of you coming over and just showing that you want to get involved, so it's great. But we're starting with a guy called Dave Shirkhani. He's based in Portland, Oregon. He's had a whimsical life in the music industry, supporting all kinds of bands in merch and as a bandmate. He's been a bassist. He's still a bassist in a band. He's in 2 bands now. He's part of a non-profit. He's an artist. Like, he's had an amazing life. And Dave was, very kind enough to come on. We only planned this about an hour and a half ago at the time of recording. I've actually already recorded it with him. I'm doing the intro afterwards. But I appreciate him doing this on such short time. But it was an amazing conversation. I learned so much about Portland, the city, as well as the sort of US culture for pop punk, the drinking culture, food culture, and also what it's like to be someone involved in the industry, whether it's being involved in merch or being part of the band itself. Dave gave a really interesting insight into the kind of life that you can live as a tour person, as it were. So I wanted to thank Dave for coming on. Thank you to everyone who's getting involved with the post. It's doing really, really well, and hopefully there'll be more coming up in the future. I've got a bloody long list of people to talk to now, so hopefully I'll take my time with it, so I appreciate your patience with it all. But we're going to start with this one from a man I didn't meet until about 3 hours ago, so this could be very fun. But thank you very much, Dave. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening, and I'll see you on the other side. It does actually say Jen. You were right.
Yeah. How's it going?
Yeah, very good. I was just actually sitting around thinking this was organized about what, an hour ago?
Yeah.
Here we are. Well, I'm glad you joined, honestly. I'm surprised that the post had such an impact, and honestly, I'm just checking it now, and dozens of people are coming over being like, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this. So you're the first of many. So I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, that
That's
was
so cool.
yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad to have you as my first person from that very post. But yes, welcome. Obviously, I only know you from your Instagram page, Blacked and Gifted, but I'm seeing now that your name is Dave.
That's right. That's right. My name is Dave. I've been in the music industry for about 23 years.
Wow.
I'm about to be 40 years old. I started off as a teenager playing in a pop punk band and did probably every mistake that you could ever possibly make in that realm, which is like sign a record deal really early when everybody tells you not to, and go out on the road when you have no money and just spend every penny that you make just trying to survive, like living in a van with your friends. But it was a lot of fun, and I don't regret any of it or anything like that, but I got a lot of fun stories to tell about it.
Well, that's exactly why we're here. And so what? So the band? Are you talking about what was it? The quality that you were involved with
So
first?
that's who I'm currently playing with now.
Oh, there you
I live
go.
in Portland, Oregon, and that's my like shitty punk band. I
Well, then,
used to have a pop punk band back in around 2004
yeah.
to
Oh,
about 2009, and my band was called Mile High School. Mile like the distance that you guys
ah,
don't use.
I, s- I use them just not as much. That's all we'll say.
Yeah, so we were a pop punk band from Virginia, and we got a lot of really great opportunities. We got to play the Warp Tour. We got to open for like every big kind of up and coming kind of pop to pop punk act. Back in that time, we got to like play with "Cute is What We Aim For." We got to play with I'm blanking right now. We got to open for Boys to Men. We got to
Wow.
we went on tour with the Wonder Years. They're actually some of our like really really good friends. They used to be in a band before that called the Premiere, and we took them out on tour. Yeah, bunch of other bands. I could sit here all day and name drop.
Plenty of the people you know. Well, how did it all begin? How did you get started in your early years of, is that just the thing you did in 2004? Because everyone was,
So before I was playing in bands even before that.
oh
I
wow.
graduated high school in 2003, but had a band. Probably had my first band in about 2002. I had parents that did not support my music career or my musical endeavors whatsoever. I remember very vividly my mom when I asked her if I could join the school band. She replied, "If you were musically inclined, somebody would have informed me by now."
God.
I remember, yeah, it ripped my heart out. So I
Spoken like a
remember like
true mother
saving up all
figure.
my money and buying my first bass guitar and just playing it so loud, just shaking the walls of our house just to make her mad. Just probably
Rebellious
learning
with
every like New
music.
Found Glory cover I could.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, brilliant. So how was it that pop punk or just the general punk scene was what you started off with? I know it was kind of very ubiquitous in the early 2000s anyway, but was it something that you were listening to anyway, or was it something that you probably not your parents got involved in it, judging by that story? But
I was obsessed with whatever MTV kind of threw at me at the time. I was still in high school. I remember like really liking Incubus and really liking probably like Limp Bizkit and Korn and like all the weird new metal stuff. And then I remember the first time I ever used Napster. I remember stealing music and somebody had like sunk up old anime with new pop punk. And so it'd be like Dragon Ball Z mixed with like a Less Than Jake song or a Newfound Glory song or a movie life song. I remember thinking like this is awesome. This is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life.
wow. Oh, that's so weird. Oh God, Napster's not something I've heard in a really long time. A friend of mine mentioned, what was it? I can't remember what it's called. It's something to do with sharks, but another one where you just nick so much music off of it. They've
Oh,
probably all gone.
absolutely.
They've probably all gone down now, but thank
Oh
God.
yeah, yeah. I'm sure there's still like Pirate Bay and other ways to, wink, wink.
They're hidden around in the musical ether somewhere. But wow,
Absolutely.
you've had quite a background in the scene then, and now you're still involved in it even now.
Even now, yeah, yeah. My band lasted till about 2009, and then our singer and drummer both started families, and they didn't want to be on the road anymore, and our label didn't really want to support us anymore. Not that they were really supporting us in the beginning anyway.
Mm.
So I remember wanting to keep going. I got that taste of road life, and I was like, this is definitely what I want. So I started reaching out to some management companies that we had talked to, some booking agents, some bands. I tried my hand at being a tech for a while. I was a drum tech for a little while. I was a sound guy. I was tour manager. I finally landed on merch. I love doing merch. For God, like 10 years, I was the merch guy for bands like Train, Maroon 5, You Me at Six, The Blackout, Foals. Who else? I got to go out with like the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, a whole bunch of different artists. And I just kind of found my niche in doing that. It made sense to me. You didn't really have to like, you know, break your back doing it too much. I mean, it's hard work, but it's not like anything that you can't do if you don't put your mind to it.
Yeah,
And
and
I had the best time doing that.
I mean, I remember you saying well, on the messages, the brief messages that I got from you, that you said you lived in the UK for a few years when you were with the Blackout and Foals and that kind of thing. Where was it that you were
Yeah.
based in the UK?
I was in London in the Vauxhall Lambeth area.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, loved it there. I had a nice tiny little apartment and probably wasn't legally supposed to be working, but
I'm
you
sure you got
know, we
away
get
with it.
it done. Yeah. I made some amazing friends. It's a wonderful place there. I got to go to a bunch of music festivals like Slam Dunk and Reading and Leeds, and it's a wonderful place.
Mm.
I miss London so much every day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that everyone else has a fun, like a nice nostalgic view of London because I live about 20 minutes away from it, and every time I
Oh, what
go, I
part?
go, yeah, and so when I go there, I'm always like, yep, this is the capital. And then I hear people every time I talk to people like yourselves, they go, "Oh my God, I've always wanted to go to London, or I've been there and it's amazing." And I go, "Yep, I can get the train there. It takes about half an hour, and it's nice.
Where
It's
do you
fine."
live?
So I'm South London, so I'm just off like Croydon area.
Okay, yeah.
Not that
I know that is.
not that I'm trying to dox myself.
No, no.
But it's a large
Sorry.
stretch. It's fine. It's a large stretch of South London. But
True,
yes,
true.
but yeah, I mean London in terms of, and especially Slam Dunk as well. I did an episode with my brother and his partner who went to Slam Dunk this year. And just the influence that that has. I imagine it's like the sort of Warped Tour or When We Were Young festival of the UK.
Absolutely.
Which one did you go to? What year?
Oh, that when I lived there was between 2009 and 2012, so one of those years, but it was kind of just a big chaos of shows and festivals and touring
Sounds
and stuff like that.
sounds about right.
Yeah, I feel like my Boys in the Wonder years were on it that year that
Mm.
I was there, but I can't quite remember.
Well, I mean, there's so thing is the bands that you listed, and the ones that were, at that festival, the fact that there's just so many of them. I think that's what that post that I put up. That's what's sort of it compelled me to mention it because I feel like everyone is going to have so many different stories about the industry and how it affects them. I mean, what was it that called out to you about the post specifically? Was it about your time in the industry, or is there like a specific record that came to mind when you saw it?
The record question actually like really struck a chord with me, especially with your tie-in to mental health.
Mm.
I've been a bass player most of my life, and then after that, I was a merch guy, and I moved out to Portland, Oregon recently, and started like kind of dabbling in being an artist as well.
Oh,
And
nice.
I got to do this. I got to do this character, this brain character that kind of goes like he's supposed to be your representative for positive mental health awareness, and we got to do like a campaign with the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. They had like a big like 1-800 number, and they just recently shortened it to a 3-digit number.
Mm.
uh, so we got to do like a campaign with them and this big arts festival and stuff like that. And yeah, I was just thinking like how much music was a part of that art project for me, and how music can definitely determine where our emotional states are. It can put us in a good mood. It can put us in a bad mood. We all have that song that just like uplifts us, and that song that just kind of drags us down. And to hear what that record is, or that song is, or that band is for people, always like I love it. I'm the guy that like when I meet a new person, I ask them what their top 5 favorite records are, and I'm sure I I annoy the shit out of people with that question. But
I
it,
mean,
it I think it
someone's
goes
got to
straight to
ask.
your soul.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's why I love it because obviously we'll get into it in the next hour or so, but I imagine that you have more than five albums that could canonically like guide your life to where it is
I
now,
do.
and
Oh, absolutely. And then it changes. It changes. I keep like a running list of it in my phone, like my notes app. And every now and then I'm like, this one's going to get bumped down. This one's off the list. Or, what, let's add this new one on here.
wow. So what's at the top at the moment then?
The
Do you
top,
have?
like new or like all time?
Let's go with all time because I think if we're
All
gonna
time,
if we're gonna
I am
surmise,
a stupid, crazy Taking Back Sunday fan.
that's an excellent choice. I
Yeah,
was
tell all your friends. I listened to it the first time in high school. I think I was maybe like a junior or senior in high school, and I took the title very seriously. I remember like showing it to all my friends and like passing it around and like writing out all the lyrics and thinking they were so clever. Actually, funny story. I first purchased the CD in London. I was visiting like as a tourist, like not working there as a kid. And I went to the Tower Music in Piccadilly Circus, and I bought the Taking Back Sunday Tell Your Friends CD from there. And I
wow.
remember listening to it four times the first day I got it. I just thought it was the most brilliant, like dramatic, best piece of rock music I'd ever heard.
That's a bold statement, but
Yeah, I was 17.
how do
I
you?
was 17 coming off of Limp Bizkit and Corn. So
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, as at your age now, nearly sort of 20 years on, do you still look back at it with the same? Is it more of a nostalgic look, or do you still see it as just as good as it was back then?
just as good as it was. Maybe some of the lyrics are a little harder to relate to now that I'm not a love struck romantic 17-year-old punk rock kid. But yeah, it still goes hard. Still goes hard to this day.
Yeah,
That's a great one.
yeah.
I
Well,
also
what?
recently really fell in love with Pup. The Morbid Stuff
Oh,
album
yeah.
just really speaks to me. I guess as an older pop punk listener, it's been hard to kind of like keep up with a lot of the new bands that are coming out, like Hot Mulligan, or stuff like that. Like they just don't. I don't know, in my older age, it doesn't speak to me as much as maybe it did in my late teens or early 20s. But the Pup Morbid Stuff record just really does it for me.
I was gonna say that's because that was only about what 5 ago,
Yeah,
2019, I
see,
think it
I'm
was.
way late on
Yeah.
that.
Well, that's quite a variation though, then, because I guess if your career and your work has followed it, then the actual music you're listening to is evolving with that as well. Going from Tell Your Friends was 2002, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken, and then yeah, going to 2019. I mean, 17 years of pop punk is
yeah.
sort of breaching that gap. Wow. Well, what is it? Is it sort of like because I know Tell Your Friends took a like hardcore sort of new metal vibe in their first album, a bit harder, and then Morbid Stuff's more on like I guess an emo vibe, like a sort of hardcore emo vibe on leaning
It's just
into
I don't
that.
know. I feel like for both records, they as like pieces of art written, the writer just didn't give a shit kind of thing. Really just like threw caution to the wind. He's like, you know what? I'm really gonna speak my mind, and if people connect, cool, and if they don't, that's cool too.
Mm,
And yeah, especially the Morbid Stuff record, I feel like he just comes out like guns blazing, life is not easy, life is not hard, but we're here, we're all in it together.
mm. So do you have like a different emotional connection to both of those albums? Because obviously when you were 17 and listening to Tell Your Friends, and when you're listening to Morbid Stuff when you're, I presume, in your mid 30s, late
Yeah,
30s.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, they both hit me in like different places, but at the same time, they both like ignite kind of this fire in me. That the whole reason that we make music and the whole reason that we write and we struggle and we like stress over all that is we want like some part of us to connect with some part of the listener, and
mm.
I think that still reigns true to this day. The more personality, the more of your like real self you put into your songs and into your album, the more people will connect with it.
And I think a lot of albums lose that. Maybe not necessarily recently. I think particularly this year, a lot of music has been really good, but I think there's a huge lack of maybe emotional connection to a lot of the records. Like some of them come out and they sound fairly similar, and it's not that they're bad. They go on, and you can't really tell one track from the other. But I think stuff, particularly Morbid Stuff, that is a concept album. It's one that you can narrow down every single song to its individual story. And I think when you can get to that level where you can listen to two different songs and get two completely different messages from them in the same record, then you've got something special.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think that's just, I mean, I haven't listened to Morbid stuff in ages, so that's one to write down. I have my notepad here. That's what I'm writing. That's one to add. So what was
While
it?
you're writing down bands, another one on my top five that I feel like a lot of people haven't heard of. Again, this is a dated one. I'm almost 40, and this record is easily over 20 years old. But there's a band from Virginia called Fairweather, and they have an album called "If They Move, Kill Them," and it is one of the most solid pop punk records I've ever heard. They were signed to Equal Vision back in the day, and I feel like they just never like got the real, I don't know, the stardom that they deserve. But they're one of the greatest bands to ever come out of Virginia, and that record just blows people's mind when they hear. They're like, "How did I never hear of this band before?"
I was just going to say because I've never seen this before. This was 2001, and
Yeah,
I like the windmills. That's nice.
right.
I guess fair weather. Thanks, Brain. But I think, yeah, I've literally never heard of these guys before,
It's a
and
banger. I don't think you'll be disappointed. I hope you're not disappointed in it, but it's one of my absolute favorites. I think they're still a band to this day. They took a long hiatus, and they kind of came back a few years ago with a new record that
mm,
is really much of a pop punk record. It's more of just kind of a straight line rock album. But this first one, if they move, kill them, is solid. There
well, I am writing that one down right away.
we go. All
Oh,
right,
it,
you won't be. You'll love it. You'll love it.
I absolutely will. Well, that's great though, because it seems there's such a variation, considering you've had such an interesting career within the scene already. Like the amount of influence you must have had from bands you were traveling with, is it must be quite massive. But also, I imagine you never met Fairweather in your work, so having that variation must be so inspiring for the kind of work you were in.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And I like to mix the genres up a lot. Like somebody told me once when I got the job as crew in the music industry, when I stopped being a musician and started working for musicians, that I'd probably never get to work for a band that I enjoyed. And that hasn't been the case. I've gotten to work with a lot of bands that I grew up loving. I got to tour with Cypress Hill. That was like a huge thing for me, and I smoke a lot of weed as well, so that was a lot of fun too. Um, but like, yeah, I haven't gotten to work with as many pop punk bands, unfortunately, as I would have liked to. When I was on the Warp Tour, when I switched sides from playing to working for a band, I got to work for another Warp Tour band called Sing It Loud. And they were a lot of fun as well. Super nice guys, super chill. But yeah, after that, like I kind of after the Warp Tour, my after Warp Tour is kind of your summer camp, if you will, for being a crew guy. It kind of like breaks you in, it trains you. But after that, you kind of move up to the bigger levels. And unfortunately, when I was coming up, a lot of the mainstream stuff was more hip hop, R&B, and country. And a lot of the pop punk bands were sadly, it was kind of the start of the decline where they were having trouble putting as many people into venues or selling as many CDs and stuff like that. It definitely became a lot harder to book those bands and kind of still make ends meet payment wise.
Mm. What would you say is like your favorite memory from that time of being a member of the industry? Like, is it with a certain band, or is it just being there in the crowds amongst, countless people like yourself?
I got I got to do a tour with Train and Maroon 5, and it was as a merch guy. And they sell a lot of merch. They sell a
Mm.
massive amount, something close to about $150,000 a night
Oh my
in
God.
merchandise. And so I had a semi truck just filled to the brim with merch. And this was a few months after the Wonder Years Suburbia I've Given You All record had came out, and I was obsessed with it.
Mm.
And every day I would climb into this hot, sweaty, disgusting merch truck and have to pull, 70 boxes worth of stuff to make enough for the arena to have merchandise. And every day I would listen to that record just bumping it, whether it be in my headphones, on a big set of speakers. I don't know what it was, but that record really drove me that whole year actually. And it made my life. It's still it's top five best records I've ever heard to this day.
It comes up with a lot of people, Suburbia. I mean, of the messages I've had, I'd say at least three or four, including yourself, have mentioned that album in some way. So I'll be intrigued to get to a time when I have more than one person talking about the same album. So I'm not sure how I'm gonna deal with that, but we'll get through to that.
It's a
Um,
phenomenal record. It's just I don't know. It really speaks to me, and this like again, we toured with them in their early days, and I'm really similar age to the vocalist of the band, and I just feel like his life journey and a lot of their fans' life journey, including myself, is just we're all on the same timeline here. You know, we're like starting families at the same time, or we graduated college at the same time, or we got shitty jobs at the same time, or tried to make it in a band at the same time, and yeah, I feel like I'm on the ride with him throughout their entire career. You know, every record. I don't think they know how much I listen to their stuff, but I listen to their stuff a lot. Uh, every record, just it's the next chapter in life, and I really enjoy that. I really, it's again one of those things that where you put so much of your personal self into your art that so many other people can relate to. It's a winner. It's a winner
mm.
through.
And what took you to Portland? Because you said you moved there recently. Is that a band related thing, or is that just part of your new
Sort
work?
of. So I had toured for about 13 years total. And every time I came through Portland, I just loved it. It's
Mm.
very similar to London. It's very rainy. It's very cold.
Yeah, sounds about right.
But it's got kind of a small town feel to it. Weed was legal here when I got here, so that was a big thing. The beer is delicious, the food is delicious, the people are really kind. It still gets like four seasons, it gets like a good summer, and still gets like a snowy winter, and yeah, it's a beautiful area. And I'd always come through on tour, and I told myself back in like 2008, one day I'm gonna live here, and I finally did. I finally moved here.
Wow. And that was for a work thing, or is that just because you had the
No,
idea of
just
moving
yeah,
there?
I grew up in Virginia, where it's not that expensive to live in Virginia, but it's also a very military area. I think something like 9 military bases in a 60-mile radius.
God.
Yeah. So if you're not in the military or you're not like a government employee, it doesn't make any sense to live there. You're kind of just treated as kind of a second class citizen if you're, not a part of that scene. And I wasn't a part of that scene. And the only good part about it was that the rent was cheap. But yeah, most of my family have left there. My partner's family have left there. So yeah, there just wasn't any real reason to stick around.
That's quite a move, though. I mean, from Virginia to, I don't know, I'm trying to remember my American states now. I'm fairly sure
It's a
Virginia's
big
on
one, yeah. It's
the east
clearly
side.
it's clear across the country from one coast
Yeah.
to
Are your parents still there?
my mom is in Virginia, and then I have my dad is he travels abroad kind of thing. My parents are divorced. Is
Do
what it is.
they?
But see, I grew up a military kid, so I was always traveling anyway, even before the touring. Like I was living out of a suitcase or a couple of boxes. Like I was built for this.
Mm. If you
This is
were,
kind of
you were,
almost like the first time I've stood still for a while, but even that isn't true because I've still been like touring. Like I've done a run with Tyler the Creator or Sleigh Bells or just they've gotten much shorter now. Like my tours used to be like 8 months long, and now they're only like 8 days long.
oh, well, that's, oh, wow. You've really, 8 months. My God.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, are you a person that generally likes to stay active anyway? Are you not someone that sits around doing not a lot anyway?
Oh yeah, I'm very active. I'm president of a nonprofit. I'm in like 6 different bands. I manage a couple different artists. I still do merch. I work in a venue now, so that kind of alleviates the need to tour as much. But I do like show settlement and production managing and stage managing, and yeah, I I can't walk away from the music industry, even
No,
if I'm.
even if you tried,
Yeah,
seemingly.
yeah. A
But
lot. There
that
used to be that magazine. I don't know. Is Alt Press still exist?
I know the name, but I could not tell you if it's still around.
They used to have a section in there that was called the like get to know your lifer, and something I think like 10, no, even more, 15 years ago, they interviewed me on there to like get to know your life. I remember like doing that, being mid interview, being like, "Man, I bet I probably won't be doing this for the rest of my life." And
Funny,
I was
funny
just
how
like
things
standing in a
work.
parking lot somewhere, like talking about Bring Me the Horizon, being
Wow.
like, "Yeah, my days are probably numbered with this."
And yet here you are. I
Here I
mean,
am. Yeah.
and still, I mean, do you have any prospects in the future of like what's coming up for this kind of industry and what kind of work you're in? Have you got
Ooh,
much
out
planned?
here, it's all going corporate. It's all going really, really like we've got Live Nation and AEG kind of buying up all of our venues and all of our tours and signing up all the bands. And in Portland, we're a very independent city. We really, really take pride in the fact that our venues are locally owned and locally run, and that we don't have a big corporation coming in telling us, who can play and who can't play. But a lot of that is kind of being tested right now as Live Nation wants to bring in their first venue into Portland. And a lot of the locals are not happy about it. But a lot of the like elected officials are probably seeing it as a big chance to make a lot of money for the community. And so we'll see how it pans out.
Has that been happening all over the country, and has it just
All
made
over the
it?
country. Yeah, they've so I grew up in Virginia and we had two beautiful venues. One was called the Norva and the other is called the National, and they were both just these wonderful, big, big, beautiful rooms. I grew up seeing so many of my favorite bands on their stages, and I was so disappointed that they were both bought out by a big corporation for like $5 or $6 million each. And it hurt my heart, to hear that this place that like I got to open up for bands there. I got to headline my own shows there. I got to see all my favorite acts there. And now it's just I hear that like now they only bring in their artists and they only bring in their specific tours, and it's just they don't even. I heard they even don't even let locals play there anymore.
That just seems so weird though, because you're massively minimizing your audience. Like
Absolutely.
the whole point of acts like that is to have some localized talent, and yet they're sort of rounding up these venues in order to play their own specific. I don't know who like what kind of artists they take in now, but you're very much minimizing the kind of people that are going to go in there. And even people like yourself who support those kinds of industries are going to be massively turned off by that idea.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And yeah, I feel like it's one of those situations where their only concern is the bottom dollar and not the fan.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately how a lot of the industry has gone now. Not even recently, just since it started and since it became anything that becomes popular, even from, the 80s and the 90s and, whatever is out there, it becomes profitable. And therefore that's the main thing.
Yeah, and
That's
right, and that shift right now feels like it's weighing really heavy on the pop punk world, like with festivals like When We Were Young and the return of the Warp Tour and stuff like that. Like the desirable shows, especially out here in Portland, are the I guess the nostalgia pop punk or emo or hardcore. I just went and saw the Blood Brothers last week, and it was the craziest show I've ever seen. And I think it sold out like in the first day or something like that.
wow. I mean, that's the resurgence in full swing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I mean, the popularity has come from, I know for a fact, it's come from a lot of stuff going on TikTok and Instagram and all that stuff. Well, the social media has played a vital role in it. But I think what's happened is that the genre is split into two very different categories, and that you have the classic older generation pop punk style, and now you have the modernized Machine Gun Kelly, Travis Barker, that kind of side of it, where there's no real connection between the two. You're either very, very monetizable and very commercial, or you stick to your guns and well, a bit like that Hit the Lights
Yeah.
album. Stick to your guns and stay rooted in the genre that you know and love, and but is not as profitable. And I think that's where the difficulty comes in for a lot of bands. I don't know if you've seen that in the industry, but obviously it's already happening.
Oh yeah, I mean the last like I feel like 10 years or so have been this big like the 10-year anniversary of an album or the 20-year anniversary of an album. They've been like really almost like hitting at our nostalgia like directly, like targeting it. And I've seen that there's some bands like really lean into it and some bands I feel like don't do it at all. Like my boys in Taking Back Sunday, they've really hit the like they went real hard on the 20-year anniversary of Tell All Your Friends. But you've got bands like I feel like Fallout Boy that don't really do that. They don't like hit
Hmm.
the nostalgia thing. They just keep touring. They keep putting out new records and pushing the new records over the old ones. So
Hmm.
it's kind of, you don't have I guess they don't really have that much of a playbook to really go off of. I mean they don't want to like fall into the trend of the 80s hair metal band and become like the next joke. I guess there's already kind of a meme joke against all of the pop punk resurgence as it is.
I mean, I know that it was I think Green Day did their both 20th anniversary for American Idiot and 30th anniversary for Dookie. and
I
also released Saviors this year as well.
yeah, I
That
guess yeah, they're hitting them both.
yeah, that is the ultimate like hit for doing a new album and then celebrating two previous albums.
Absolutely. I worked that show out here in Portland actually. It was Green Day with Smashing Pumpkins, the Linda Lindas, and Rancid. It was
Wow.
massive. Yeah, it was it was the in our soccer stadium actually. And it was a Live Nation show. Funny enough, I'm just shit talking them and then also saying that I work with them.
They don't, they don't have to know. It's fine. But no one
I
has to
wanted to
know.
see Smashing Pumpkins. I wanted to be paid to see Smashing Pumpkins. So
And
I was
as
like,
you
yeah, I'll work that show.
as you
Actually,
should, as you should. Wow, wow. I
actually,
mean,
Green Day was great. They were phenomenal. I was blown away with how not only how solid they performed, but how truly nostalgic that Dookie album is for so many people. Uh,
mm,
when you hear an entire soccer stadium just go on my own, here we go together, like oh, it just set chills up my spine, and I wasn't ready for, I wasn't prepared for like how hard I was gonna be smiling for that.
yeah, and I think that's where the wholesomeness of the nostalgia comes from. Just having that feeling of familiarity. I mean, particularly for yourself with the albums you mentioned. Do you when you go back to tell all your friends now, or some of the others, like even that Fairweather album you mentioned, does it give you a warm feeling, or does it just throw you back to the time when you were listening to it?
Warm. So it's a warm feeling, and I remember I always think about where I was when I first heard the record. Like that's my go-to in my brain. Whenever I either think about who got me into the record or where I was the first time I heard it. And I always remember this Fairweather one. I was like sitting in a friend's car. I was sitting in my girlfriend, my now wife's car, and she was like, "You got to hear this band," and like put it in the CD player. And I just remember being like locked in, like nothing else in the world was happening at that moment. I can still remember her tiny little car just sitting in it and bumping that record. And then every time I throw it in now, whether I'm sitting in the car, putting it in my headphones or listening to it on my laptop, I can't just listen to one song. I have to hear the entire album straight through every time I listen to it.
And that's the same for all of them.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. The Take You Back Sunday, Tell Your Friends. I can't just hear, cute without the E, or Timberwolves at New Jersey. I got to hear everything from first track to last track, or I feel my rest of my day is incomplete.
Yeah, you can't narrow it down to just one. I guess that's what makes like a favorite or popular album for yourself. Because if you can only listen to one song, then you're probably going to ignore some of the others. But if you have an album that you can listen to completely, and that becomes a rule to yourself, then obviously that's you're gonna like it. You're gonna probably quite enjoy it,
Absolutely. I
man.
had so I had a favorite. I had a top five record that I can no longer listen to. I cannot stomach it whatsoever, and it pains me. It brings me so much hurt to think about this record, but it's not. And sadly, it's not a pop punk record. It's more of a hardcore band. But there's a band Glassjaw. They're more of like a hardcore band. More screamy. I grew up kind of being like afraid of heavy bands. I don't know what it was. It took a long time for me to like really dive into groups like Under Oath or Poison the Well or I don't know from first to last, like bands like that. But I finally got into them with Glassjaw, and that was the band that just it connected with me. I have a Glassjaw tattoo. I don't have any other band tattoos, just this Glassjaw tattoo. It's for the album that I love dearly, or I used to love dearly. It's called Worship and Tribute. And on my one arm, I have the word worship, and on my other arm, I have the word tribute. And it was because I heard this rumor that the singer back when I got into the record was chronically ill, that he was like on the verge of death of Crohn's disease, which I've later found out is actually pretty, I think, manageable if you see a doctor and eat pretty healthy and stuff like that.
Mm.
But dumb 17, 18-year-old, whatever, didn't know any better, was like, oh my God, this guy's gonna die. He's the singer of this band. They're so great. Like, I've gotta like get a tattoo. So years later, I've worked in the music industry. I've met some people. I've made some friends. Two of my good friends joined the band Glassjaw, and they get to tour as their bass and drummer. And I remember thinking that was the coolest fucking thing in the world. Two of my friends are in my favorite band. They're going to be playing my favorite songs. This is going to be phenomenal. And so they finished their tour with Glassjaw, and they had some downtime. And they're phenomenal writers. They're graduates of Berklee School of Music. I was like, "Yo, dudes, come out to Portland. Like, let's make a record together." And it was the worst experience of my entire life. We were just not productive. One of them like wouldn't stop like being really overly emotional in the studio. Like he actually like, broke down and cried. The other one was just stoned out of his mind the entire time and got like nothing done. And at the end of it, they ended up like robbing me of almost like
Oh,
$30,000 worth of shit.
Jesus.
Needless to say, they are not my friends anymore, but they still play in Glassjaw. And to this day, like I can't listen to that record without just getting a different kind of angry. Like a really, really upset, pissed off, furious angry.
Yeah, no shit. I mean, my God.
And so I've struggled. And that used to, again, I have that tattooed on my arms. I look at those words every day and I can't listen to that used to be a favorite record of mine. And I even tried the singer of Glassjaw has another band called Head Automatica, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna like lean real hard into Head Automatica,
Out of
and so
spite.
I went to a show to go see them. And I like walk in, and the drummer of Glassjaw is also now the drummer of Head Automatica, and I just turn. I've never walked out of a show in my entire life. I've stayed to the last encore of fucking every show, thousands of shows over 20 something years. I walked out that night, turned right around and just left.
Damn. Well, I mean, you got to, as I said before, stick to your guns with people like that. I mean, my, if they're gonna fucking rob you and then have the audacity to play in two of the bands, then
Oh, I know. So I can't hear that. Again, it goes back to my mental health stuff too. Like that record used to do something so amazing to me, and now it brings me nothing but sadness and pain.
obviously you mentioned heavier albums, ones that haven't hurt you in the past. Are there others that have had as much of an impact in that scene, rather than the pop punk scene, or is it mostly stemmed in that the pedigree of pop punk?
Oh, everything. I've been obsessed with music since the second grade. I remember just really, really zoning in on whatever MTV was pushing as a kid growing up in the 90s. I remember being there when, Nirvana, when that was a thing, when that was the thing, and not really understanding it, not really getting it, but it was okay. I was young. I was a little kid. I grew up like really loving the Smashing Pumpkins, and that kind of like bridged me into the Deftones, which made me want to get heavier. I guess so while that whole Limp Bizkit Korn situation was happening, I guess on the back burner were still bands like Incubus, Primus, Deftones. Once I got, I guess, kind of into my Warped Tour band, led me to bands like Glassjaw, Poison the Well. I eventually got to tour with Bring Me the Horizon. I got to do the last Taste of Chaos with them. That band is a monster.
I don't doubt that for a second.
Yeah, so like stuff like that. I'm into anything that's heavy and ferocious and in a weird time signature. The Blood Brothers, Dillinger Escape Plan, At the Drive-In. At the Drive-In is probably top five favorite bands out there as well. They're just weird and heavy, and that was actually the first show I saw when I moved here to Portland back in 2000 like 16.
We always love weird.
Yeah. That's
And
the motto here too in Portland. We keep it weird. Keep Portland weird.
I mean, the thing is, Oregon's always been the state that I want to visit the most for a variety of reasons. One, because of the culture. Two, because of what you've said, like just Portland itself as a city sounds amazing. Three, because my parents went there and said it was amazing. Four, because I played Days Gone, and outside of the zombies and general depression, it looks pretty cool. Um, and Gravity Falls is one of my all-time favorite shows, and that's based
Oh, nice.
there as well. And everything culminates into just Oregon sounding really, really cool. And now you've added like the musical element to it. I'm like, well, I have to go. But
Great.
it sounds like such a vibrant state, and Portland itself, which is it the capital of Oregon? I presume
No,
so.
it's not actually.
Ah, I always thought it was.
Yeah, no. It's just I think it's just the most populated city, and the whole rest of the state, nothing like it.
Yeah. I can believe that. It's Pacific Northwest, and then you've got this one city in the middle that's this huge,
Yeah,
vibrant
yeah,
sort of colossus, and then everything else is just trees. Yeah, it's such an interesting place. I mean,
yeah.
I don't care all that much about Cali, or I mean, I've been to New York, but that was more of a movie thing because I just wanted to tick it off. Um,
Okay.
but like any of the other states, I'm not that bothered about. But Oregon really interests me, so I'm glad to have someone who's actually there and can tell me that it's nice. So I
It's
have.
great. I've happily lived here 9 years now, and it's got a thriving music scene and art scene and beer culture and food culture. And that show Portlandia is pretty it's pretty close to accurate
Oh,
with what
nice.
I live with here. Actually, I was on an episode when I first moved here.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah,
wow. How
yeah.
was how was that?
It's awesome. It's awesome. That most of it is like kind of improv. I didn't know. So they just kind of like set up a scene or a scenario or a situation and they just kind of like throw jokes back and forth at each other. And then I guess like the funniest joke wins and that's what they roll with. I was also really surprised at how short the two main actors are. They're tiny people. Yeah.
Are they just tiny to you, or are they just tiny in general?
I think just time. I mean, I'm not that big of a person. Like, I'm maybe like 5'10". But and I feel like I was towering over them.
Maybe that's just people in I don't know. Maybe people in Portland are just really small, but
Yeah.
it's
I
just
mean, yeah, yeah, maybe.
just a
Could be.
small city. That's the thing with a place like with such a culture like that. I think you get so invested in not just the music, but the people that make the music. It's like you said, the more you can put yourself into your own music, the better it's going to come out. And I imagine Portland is really good for that. Or Oregon, just as a state, is probably really good for that.
It is sometimes too good. Sometimes they put too much out there. Sometimes they give you overkill.
Much like anywhere.
Yeah,
Have
sometimes
you?
I feel like a lot of Portlanders treat their music like it's a therapy session, and
Mm,
they're just really spilling their guts out there. They just really got something to get off their chest, and it's not a bad thing. It's just sometimes it's real personal.
yeah, I got. Yeah, I mean, well, with that whole therapy thing, obviously, the other half of this podcast is the mental health sector. I mean, has music played a role in helping you with your own personal struggles, if you've had any, and like the kind of life you've lived? Has it inspired you to do the nonprofit that you work for and get into the industry, or has it just been something that you've worked on by yourself, and music has just been on the sidelines, as it were?
Everything, all of the above. Music is so, I guess, kind of ingrained in my life that the soundtrack of my day definitely has a massive effect on my mental health state. And then the artists I tour with, they're in their own mental health places as well, and some of them are like really out there advocating for positive mental health, and some of them want to be more private. And they don't want to talk about that kind of stuff, and it all just kind of. Ooh, it's a big one. I remember being really impressed when I heard Kid Cudi talk about his mental health and stuff like that. It wasn't something that I feel like was really discussed in hip hop for a long time. And I remember thinking, I guess you can't see me. I'm a black male, so I remember thinking that wasn't something that like my people talk about. Like growing up, most of my black friends we didn't discuss like our mental health or how we're doing. We kind of keep it surface level, and to hear a guy like him talk about that, and then later before he became absolutely batshit crazy, Kanye West talking about mental health and stuff like that. A lot of times these artists want to keep that stuff private, when they're having a breakdown or when stuff's not going well or when they're really deep into depression or anything like that when they're medicating or what they need to medicate or what they need to get through a show or a tour or an album cycle. Like it's a huge deal. And a lot of these guys kill themselves for it. And uh, I mean, the music industry is massive. It's amazing. Sometimes it makes and breaks people's careers, but there isn't really a retirement plan set up for it. There isn't a lot of people advocating, I guess, for these rock stars to take it easy or to give less. We want all of it, especially now in this information age of social media and instant access. And I know where you are at all times. I know what you're doing at all times, and you have to update everybody at all times. That can stress people out. That can implode you.
Mm. It's an interesting you mentioned actually. Like as a person of color in America as well, do you think that the music that is played, be it hip hop or pop punk for that matter, I know bands like Action Adventure are really pushing the role of like BIPOC members in the pop punk scene. Do you think that plays a role in terms of your mental health as well? Do you feel like it would be different if you were listening to other kinds of music, or do you think it's just a generalized topic to talk about?
Definitely when I was playing music, I didn't bring it up a lot. I didn't want to like bring a lot of attention to it. I was living in a pretty vastly like well-populated African American area in Virginia. Where I live in Portland now is very white. It's very Caucasian. And that's cool. I got no problems with that. I love it here. Everybody's nice. Everybody treats everybody real fair. Yeah, I remember not wanting to like bring a lot of attention to it. Again, it was like the early 2000s as well. And I felt like we were, as a band, like struggling to keep people's attention on us as it was compared to like all the other bands that were coming out at the same time. Like we came out around the same time as like All Time Low or like Pierce the Veil and like bands like that. And we felt really overshadowed by just their existence alone as songwriters, as kind of like the management that they had, the tours that they were on, and yeah, we were just trying to struggling to just to maintain on the other fronts before we brought up any of our, I guess, our real personality stuff, like the
Hmm.
real humans behind the songwriters or behind the songs. Because also, like, I don't know, I grew up performing in around the MySpace days.
Oh my God, yeah. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so we didn't even have Instagram when I was a band. That came later. iPhone wasn't even a thing. I remember touring with no cell phones.
I mean,
No,
honestly,
maybe like two of us had cell phones,
I wouldn't be
maybe.
against that, to be honest, this day
Yeah,
and
yeah.
age.
Yeah, we had like maps, like real paper maps and shit or actually we printed out MapQuest directions every day if we found like a hotel that would let us do it or a friend's house or something like that. But yeah, nothing like what it was now. We had to book tours that way. We had to like get people's attention. We printed real flyers. I guess it was just a lot of work staying relevant in such an up and coming kind of like I remember just being 17 and realizing that there were more than just the bands in my town or my city and just being blown away by that. Like, oh my God, like you're competing with the whole world with
Yeah.
your entertainment industry, that everybody.
Do you think that there's something quite endearing? I mean, obviously it's a lot of work, but do you think it's quite a rewarding feeling when back in the day when you have to, make your own flyers and give people, get people to pay attention to you? Normally, even now you can just put something on Reddit or Instagram or whatever and just say, I'm here, look at me, here's my post. But,
Yeah, yeah. Oh
back
no,
back
absolutely. Yeah. We used to, as a band, we would go on tour. We would go to the local mall closest to each venue, and we would each have a CD player, and we would walk around passing out flyers and putting the headphones of the CD player on as many kids as we could until we got kicked out of the mall, usually. Try to sell CDs. We try to get, promote the show. We would try to drum up some attention about it. We would, have to promote our MySpace or our Pure Volume or just whatever we could. Like we were basically, just living out of our van. 6 people in a 12-passenger van, eating McDonald's for every meal. And that was definitely taking a toll on our mental health as well as our physical health.
Yeah, no, my God. I mean, Mackey's is good, but maybe just the one.
Yeah.
Maybe just the
Oh,
one. But I can't.
many
I
years of
could.
living on pizza and beer. That definitely was not a positive role
I
on
mean,
my.
that doesn't sound too bad for like a week. Pizza and
No.
beer for a week, and then go back to eating
eight
Mackey's.
months at a time. Yeah. In a van with your friends who sometimes you love and sometimes you want to strangle.
But I guess that's part of the fun of traveling. When the people you're hanging out with, obviously you're there because you care about them and you play music with them, but everyone's going to get on your nerves. But I guess that's part of the fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's definitely a story. And also I was probably a lot more impatient in my early 20s and teens. I'm sure we were all kind of goofy and doing dumb stuff. It's the first time you've left home away from your parents and you're like, this is my job, and you want to tell everybody about it. And
So what's the plan for the future then? I mean, now that you've been in Portland for a while, obviously you've been in so many bands, you're still in the band now, the quality, is that going well, or is there something more that you're pushing towards for the future?
it's going awesome. I just love playing. I love being on stage. I have a wonderful daughter, a beautiful daughter. One day I hope to, give her her first guitar and teach her, those four pop punk chords that you learn.
Get the power chords out nice and early.
Right, yeah, yeah. And just take it from there. Maybe she'll start a band. Maybe we'll start a band together. I'm still doing art. I still make and create stuff. I'm a part of a up and coming Winter Light Festival here in Portland. That's going to be a
Oh,
lot of fun.
wow.
Yeah.
Sounds
Uh,
awesome.
I just joined a ska band. I played bass in a ska band. Yeah, I'm always doing 10 million different things.
You need a break, my friend. You need to chill out.
One
But
day.
what maybe one day. Well, yeah, but I mean, the band that you're in, that's the quality. And then what's the other band that you've now recently joined?
I've joined a ska band called Systemic Collapse. Brand new band, a lot of fun. It's kind of like a punk, skate punk ska kind of stuff. It's a lot of fun. There's just some dudes in the neighborhood. I also met them on Reddit too.
Well, there you go then. Just it works. It works. That's all I'm saying.
It does. It does. But that it's made me lazy though. Like I haven't put up a poster on a physical, telephone pole in months. I
That's what
haven't.
we need to go back to. We need to go back to the old days of I thing is I'm what I forgot how old I was then. I'm 24. So I kind of just missed. I had the sort of when I was what 5 or 6 probably that was when all this the main pop punk scene was coming up, and I mean I always stand by that Burnout 3 is my favorite soundtrack to any game, and
Nice.
that's what got me into it. And Sugar Cult's Palm Trees and Power Lines was the first album I bought, and then that's what got me into it and all that kind of stuff. um
Oh, so
but
good. So good.
cracking record. But like that's I think it just shows that even though there's probably what 13, 14 years between us, the feeling of that year, that sector of music is exactly the same. And we need to go back. I just want to go back to a time when we put posters on telephone poles and advertised by throwing people their CDs and stuff. I think as much as Spotify and Reddit have a place, I think the authentic nature of music needs to be needs to be done in that way. I just think it's far better if you're showing your emotions in the music, then surely you want to quite literally give it to someone, not just put it up and have it in the ether or whatever. I don't know. I just really like music. It's like
Actually, you just brought up something that totally made me realize. Tony Hawk Pro Skater is probably how I really, really got into pop punk and punk music and stuff like that. I remember playing that game at home, like sitting there, and then there would be like that Lagwagon song is on there, or the Alien Ant Farm song is on there, or Meloncolin, or Goldfinger. And I just remember being like, yo, what is this music and how can I get more of it?
you're not the first person to say that a video game of some sort has inspired them with their music. I think SSX has come
Absolutely.
up.
Yeah.
Tony Hawk's has definitely come up. Need for
Mhm.
Speed came up one time, which I was
Nice.
surprised by. I don't remember a lot of soundtracks to Need for Speed, but yeah, Burnout 3 will always be mine. But I think again, Burnout 3 would have been what 2004, 2005, and it's
Yeah.
all just conglomerates into this one time period from the early 2000s. I mean, obviously the late 90s had its own special times. I don't know if you have any albums from then that might have inspired you.
Oh, tons. From the late 90s, again, it would have been like Smashing Pumpkins, Soundgarden, Primus, oh God. And then video games as well. That would have been Tony Hawk, Pro Skater. I was also like really getting into the zombie games, but then in the late 90s, like Resident Evil was massive then.
Mm.
And oh man, yeah, I could play Resident Evil 2 all day long. I remember my mom having to like kick me off the TV. And I did this thing though. I remember wanting to, I was a dumb kid. I had a big stereo next to my TV, so I would play these games, but I wanted to control what the soundtrack was. So I remember like, oh, I'm gonna like put in Rage Against the Machine, or I'm gonna put in Less Than Jake, or I'm gonna put in Newfound Glory while I play these games. And that was definitely like really, really pivotal in my music listening kind of thing, like curating what game to what soundtrack I was, because like you're playing Resident Evil, you got like a shotgun, you're trying to take down all these zombies, like Rage Against the Machine's guerrilla radio is going to put you there.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking, imagine if like Newfound Glory's At Least I'm Known for Something comes on while you're shooting a zombie's head off, and just like I don't know if the tone might work, but I think having Newfound Glory as a soundtrack to to Resident Evil 2 would be
Yeah.
amazing. Did you play the remake? Did you play the remake?
Yeah, absolutely.
What did you think?
It was all right. Again, I'm like older now, so I had a lot more like time to like focus on it and like really like dive into it and play it 10 million times as a high schooler. And now I have like a kid and like a bunch of bands. Now I just kind of play when I'm stoned and at home up at 2 o'clock in the morning. Actually, I just finished the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth game, and that one I thought was just beautiful, brilliant. That series being remade is really doing it for me.
Did you play the original when it came out on
Oh,
the PS
so many.
One, I think?
Yes, I still have. I still have my PS1 with my copy of FF7
Oh my God.
and Resident Evil 2.
We've talked about music for 45 minutes, and that's the most nostalgic thing we've had. Hearing about Final Fantasy VII, the original on PS1. Is it on 3 discs? Is it still on the 3 discs?
The original one? Yeah, three
Yeah.
discs.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Oh, this is why we need to go back to 2004.
There's something else that's really cool about Portland is there's a million, it's not a million, but there's like 10 really, really fantastic retro video game shops here where they sell the original like Super Nintendo and their games and the Sega and the Dreamcast and all that stuff. And then every year we have this big retro game convention and they bring in all these like video game celebrities. Like they brought in the guy that does the voice for like NBA Jam, or they brought in the woman who was the voice actress for Jill Valentine and Chris Redfield from Resident Evil.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, they bring in like all like they bring in like the body doubles from Mortal Kombat.
That's so sick. I mean, every thing is every other year, my brothers and I, well, we're trying to do this. We've only done it once. We'll do a trip to the US. We did New York in 22. No, 23. We did it last year.
Nice.
And then this year, I don't know, we just can't afford it. But next year, we're thinking of doing another one. And we were trying to decipher which city we should go to. I'm going to put Portland on the list. In fact, I'm going to
There you
write it
go.
down now. I think we were stuck between like Washington and Chicago because we've got friends in Chicago, but
You can't go wrong with Seattle either.
Seattle,
Seattle,
I've heard, is really nice.
Washington, it's the big city version kind of Portland. Everybody hates the comparison, but yeah, it's real rock and roll. If they let you, I don't know if they still let you do tours of the Sub Pop offices and stuff like that. Yeah, it's a really really cool rock and roll town. So is Portland. They're both wonderful, amazing. They both have like great music festivals in the summertime. Weird food and yeah,
It
legalized
does.
weed.
I mean, that's always a benefit. Can't deny that. And what is it? I mean, I guess as an American as well, I mean, you would always have sort of an inkling or like a hedge towards American pop punk. But is there any global pop punk that has interested you? Obviously, I'm a fan of the UK stuff. We've got Neck Deep and all those kinds of groups. Are there any others that sort of push to you? Are there any others that interest you from outside the US?
Love my boys in the Blackout, as well as my boys in Yumi at Six. Always thought they were some great bands, and
Hmm.
again, I don't know if I would have ever even like gotten to like experience them if I hadn't been touring and my time on the Warp Tour and stuff like that. And also I always loved that the Warp Tour made sure to bring over international bands. I want to say another year there was this band Chunk, no Captain Chunk.
Yeah, from France.
Yeah.
I love
They
them.
were awesome. Closure in Moscow, which I feel like they're either from. I hate everybody hates when you mix up Australia or New Zealand. But I feel like maybe they're from New Zealand.
They're from one of them.
Yeah, they're a dope band. Bowls. I mean, they're not. I guess they're not pop punk. I don't even know what you would call for just rock. I guess.
I like alternative folk rock is what I'd
Yeah,
put.
they used to be dancier. They used to be like club bangers kind of thing, and now I feel like it's more experimental.
Yeah, well, I remember when like My Number came out, that was an absolute banger, and then
Yeah.
they sort of toned it down a bit. I guess that's what happens when, like we were talking about, when something just gets popularized. That's they've just gone for something that's easier to access for most people, I guess. But I
Yeah.
still like them; they're still very good.
Oh yeah, I think they've more of like a live show. They've always been a live show kind of band, but I think they write more now to like please the live show as well, to like include like a big LED wall and like a massive lighting thing and stuff like that. Like I think they
Mm.
used to be in the small clubs and now they've got to like write it for the arenas and the big headlining sets at like Glastonbury and stuff like that.
When you said chunk, it reminded me of a story. My brothers went to Slam Dunk the other year, and they caught the end of the Chunk set, and because they're very French, but their music doesn't sound very French, it was quite jarring when they were speaking. So they, I don't know how this will go, but it's like we are Chunk, no Captain Chunk, and this is our song Bitter, and then they just go into the most American sounding voice that you've ever heard, going from very like hard French accents to very, very American sounding. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
Sadly, I never got to see them, but I would love to at one point.
Are they not a band anymore? I didn't keep up with them, unfortunately.
They are. They had like a 6 year hiatus and then came
Oh,
back with an album in 21, I think, Gone on the Good Days. They're doing a few bits now, but yeah, they had a fair break. But now they're back, thank God. But yeah, I love them. I mean, there's so many from doing this job of like I call it a job, of like writing reviews for bands and writing about the music that's coming out. The amount of bands I've found from all over the world is mad. I mean, France, Germany. I had one from Jakarta in Indonesia that I was
oh,
talking to.
nice.
They're all over the place, and all of them love pop punk as a genre. They all get involved with it. It's a global thing.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I'm gonna put that Chunk, no Captain Chunk album on my list.
Yeah, if there's Gone Are the Good Days, and then Pardon My French, which is a great title for a French band, is probably their best. It's their heaviest album as well. I'll take that trade. I'll take Fairweather for you if you get Chunk. There we go.
Here we go. Thank you. Great trade.
I'm gonna have to make this a regular thing now. Every time someone comes on, they have to give me an album, and I have to give them an album.
Ooh, I like that. I like that.
I like this. I'm writing down notes as I'm doing the podcast. This is how we do it. This is the professionalism I like to show.
The way I like to get to know somebody, besides asking them their top fives, I also like to hear what your favorite concert and first concert.
Oh, is this? Oh my God, are you asking me a question?
I'm asking you a question now. You got
Oh,
yeah, you hogged all the questions. Now it's my turn.
oh, fuck yes. Okay, so first concert. There's technically, well, it's kind of ironic. There's technically two because there's the first concert I went to, like with my parents, the first concert I actually went to, and then the first one I went to with a band that I chose. So when I was very young, must have been 6 or 7, my parents took me to see Simple Minds in a big,
Ooh,
massive field. I don't remember a lot about it, but I distinctly remember being on my dad's shoulders and then playing Don't You Forget About Me, and the whole crowd just going mad and swaying. And I must have been like 7 or something, but it was absolutely brilliant. Um,
that's awesome.
Really cool. And my dad's a huge fan of, of the mid 80s. He's a huge Cure fan, Simple Minds, that kind of thing. So it was very big for him. We also went to a Keen concert because my mum's a huge fan of them. I don't know if you know them, but they're very, very English.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Love them. But I'd say the first one I chose to go to was with my brother when I went to go and see a band called Mallory Knox in London. They've recently got back together, and I went to go and see him a couple of weeks ago. But I would recommend their album Asymmetry, which, funnily enough, is celebrating 10 years this year. So
Ooh.
we can go back to that. But that was
They're
the
a
first
heavier
one.
band, aren't they? They're kind of like heavy.
They're like the most modern rock band out there, I would say. They're
Okay.
very like they have influences from pop punk and sort of hardcore, but they're a very distinctively like modern British rock band. Um,
Okay.
and I adore them. They're one of the first bands I ever got into. And they're a band that all three of me and my brothers really, really like. So we've kind of all gotten closer as a result of the music that we listen to.
Well,
Um,
that's cool.
yeah, it was really cool. And my older brother was the one that took me because I must have been, what, 14, 13, 14, and he was 17. So he was able to take me as a quote unquote adult. Um, but so we got away with that. But just to experience that, and when I was listening to them, I used to want to learn. The way I got into it was hearing the sort of chugging sounds of the rhythm guitar and thinking this is really cool. And I have to admit that I once thought a rhythm guitar and a lead guitar were two different types of guitar, not just styles. So I used to search up rhythm guitar on like Amazon and other sites to see, and then always come up with just guitar. And I'm like, no, 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 I'm looking for a rhythm guitar. Um, Needless to say, I never found one. I just found guitars. But that was the first. I think going to that concert sort of cemented my love for not just pop punk music, but guitar music. And I think having that and it sort of lent all three of us to go to different ways in our music. So I'm very pop punk orchestrated. My older brother is big into his sort of garage indie, and then my younger brother's a big metal and hardcore fan. So we all took our own paths, but it started with that one concert and that that one band, as it were. So it was just, yeah, I always look back on them as like what started me out as loving music as a thing, really.
Way to go, Mallory Knox.
Yeah.
That's
I
so
think it,
cool. That's a great name too.
yeah, I can't remember. I think it's named after like an anime character or something, but I can't remember. It's the name of a character from something, but I can't remember.
I think
Um,
it's Natural Born Killers. The
yes,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, you
Yeah.
again,
It's a
far
brutal
more
movie.
than I do.
That's the most like metal movie ever, which I guess is probably why I associate the band name with like probably being something heavy.
Yeah, no, it is. They're really good. I thoroughly recommend it. There you go. There's two albums for you. Um,
Oh
but
yeah, Mallory Knox and
yeah,
Junk.
but I think I mean, when it comes to albums and concerts and stuff like that, it's always the pop punk ones that stick with me. I put in my post that obviously Cold Front's Float Around is my all-time favorite album. Sadly, they're not, a band anymore. They only did their one album and
Yeah.
left. But even recently, like I went to go and see The Story So Far in Southampton, and I'm planning to go and see 4 Years Strong in February, and State Champs I've seen, Between You and Me I've seen, and all of those bands who encapsulate the modern pop punk movement are just that every gig just gives me that vibe of like I want to be in a band and pop punk is really cool, and that feeling, while I can't verbalize it very well, is just that's exactly why this kind of podcast exists and why I want to do it, because I can meet people like yourself who have that same familiar feeling of just loving the genre for what it is. I think it's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. It definitely it links us all together. It brings us all into kind of one space and makes us sing.
Exactly, it makes us sing.
Yeah.
Perfection. Well, as like a sort of final question to you then, with pop punk as a genre or the albums that you've mentioned, what has it really taught you? Not just about yourself, but like the industry you're in. What is your sort of final thought about the genre as a whole?
Ooh, pop punk. So pop punk as a genre in the whole has definitely taught me the faster you play it, the better.
That makes sense.
Louder,
It's a very proper answer. Can't argue
yeah,
that.
louder, faster, heavier. Yeah, that's definitely. I feel like the direction that we're all going in. Again, but also still more personal. Still more. More about us. We're still learning. We're still learning who we are as pop punk. It's one of those genres that I guess since we get into it in our adolescence, or like in that weird time in our lives where we're figuring out who we are, that's who we're always going to be. We're always going to be still striving to figure out, who we are, what we're doing, if we're doing okay, if we're doing the right thing. I think that's the beauty of pop punk is being unsure of yourself, and that's okay. Everything doesn't have to be defined or be in a box or whatever. Pop punk can be whatever you want it to be. It can be nothing. It can be something. It can be, mixed with emo. It can be mixed with metal. It can be mixed with folk. It can be a cover. It can be an original. It can be a weird emo night, club night somehow as well.
It's got everything.
It really is. It's really diverse. It's accepting, it's welcoming. It's a tad bit sexist. I will say that. There's way more, I feel like, dudes probably, I don't know, just succeeding in the genre than there are women, and space for women. So I'd like to see, I guess, more inclusivity. But I think still, like I said, pop punk is figuring out, what it is and what it isn't and what it wants to be, and if this is just a phase or not.
And it's never just a phase. We all know
Never just a phase. No. Oh my
that.
God. I wear my Wonder Year shirts with pride, my Get Up Kids shirts with pride. I got some old bands. I just remember while you were telling me your story, I remember another UK band that I absolutely fell in love with just from like a CD being like handed to me. Kids in Glass Houses.
Oh yes, yes, brilliant
Always
band.
thought that they were just a fantastic band. I feel like they're not a band anymore.
I can't
But yeah.
remember actually. That's one to look up. That's one to look up while I wait.
I can't remember what it's called. I feel like it's just one word. It has flowers on it for some reason, but that one is an absolute banger.
That would be there's the album Dirt, which is flowers,
I
like
think that's it.
spelling
Yeah,
the word
yeah,
dirt.
yeah. That one was
2010.
towards the end of my Warped Tour years, I caught that record and I remember just being like, this is solid. This is like professionally written kind of stuff. Like these guys are really good.
Nice. Well, you know what? I cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing your knowledge and love for the genre. I'm very glad that you enjoyed it, and I have as well. I was just saying that I'm wearing my own bearings hoodie at the moment because it's
No
really, yeah,
way.
really fucking cold in the UK at the moment. But I'm also wearing my pop punk hoodie with pride. Ugh, thanks, Brian. But yeah, no, I just that's a huge thank you for you for coming on. Obviously, we planned this fairly quickly, but hopefully you've enjoyed the experience of coming on and sharing what you know and what you love. And yeah, do you have any final words, I guess, to people out
Uh,
there, to people, about your music or anything that's coming up, or just, to yourself?
do you make as much music and as much art and as much creativity as possible, because the world needs it. The world needs inspiration. The world needs, people expressing themselves. And yeah, I support all of
As we should.
it.
Lovely stuff.